Welcome to you. This is a history-making day for Swansea. A first rally for national independence. And I'm looking around and I feel like I'm largely talking to the choir here. You know, 5 feet above contradiction. And seeing faces that are looking forward to hearing what people have got to say today, and looking forward to taking it away and working with it. And I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look around on the floor, we've got signs of Welsh independence everywhere. These little seeds, trampled underfoot, virtually unnoticed, thrown away. Everything we do today is just a seed of what is going to be happening. Everything we do today is a small start. And one of those seeds was dropped during the Brexit referendum when somebody like us, not wealthy, not powerful, not well connected, just thought to herself, it is time we change this. It is time we change from being a subject nation, a colony, to making our own decisions. And that's what our independence means to us, isn't it? It's not narrow nationalism, it's not bigotry, it's simply the desire to stand on our own feet and a desire to be accountable to each other for our decisions. And an ordinary person took the initiative and started something. I want to introduce you to Chrissa Roberts. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much. I've never ever spoken publicly ever before in my life, but doing this has made me do a lot of firsts. So I want to thank you all for coming here. I thought this was a historic day. I won't keep you long though, because I think you need to move along. So, but I really appreciate that you have come and made this such a fantastic day. So I will ask Daniel to come here first to speak. He's a lecturer at Swansea University for English, and he's written a book called Wales Unchained. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Wel, mae'n glaw yn syrtio, yn fath bod nhw gyda chi. Dwi'n darlithydd, so rhyw 2 awr o darlith sydd gyda fi heddi. Dwi'n dod i'n eisiau gweld y match. So, yeah, okay. Like this. Yeah, this is a great one. Bravo gyda chi. I've prepared my words in English yn ddangos o pawb yn siarad Cymraeg yn mwy neu lai, ond Barack Obama in the halcyon days of 2008 reminded us of Martin Luther King's magnificent phrase, the fierce urgency of now. Now's the time for our political life in Wales to be re-energised by an independence movement. But as we heard earlier, not the introverted nationalism of UKIP, of the retro great nation nationalism of Trump, but a nationalism that aims to defend diversity, that acts as a counterforce to intolerance and xenophobia. But that's impossible, our detractors say. All nationalisms are the same. They all hide some dark desire for racial purity. And across Twitter and Facebook at the moment, there's Albert Einstein's face telling us that nationalism is an infantile disease. It's the measles of mankind. Well, I think we all know what he means. We're familiar with that kind of nationalism. It's led people within the nationalist movement in Wales to say that we shouldn't use the term. Don't use the N-word. Don't mention nationalism. Don't mention the nation. It will put people off. Well, nationalists is what other people call us. It's what our detractors call us. It's a word we need to own and define for ourselves. We need to redefine and reclaim nationalism for our own struggles today. Now recently, the way in which nationalism is used against us has been clearly demonstrated in Scotland during the Scottish independence campaign. The similarities between what was described as the anti-politics of the SNP and UKIP were consistently mentioned, despite the obvious fact that the SNP are actually in government. Guardian economic columnist Will Hutton, a man who I used to admire, imagined that Scottish independence would mark the death of liberal enlightenment before the atavistic forces of nationalism and ethnicity. Martin Kettle described the dark side of a disturbing and divisive Yes campaign. And Nick Cohen, another leftist metropolitan journalist, was adamant that Salmon's victory would strengthen the people who want to check accents and bloodlines. There's even the suggestion now, in fact, that the independence referendum in Scotland is connected to the Brexit vote and to Trump's victory in America. But it's connected only in the sense that the failure of the Yes campaign was also a tragedy, of course. Had the Scots voted for independence, they would not now face being torn against their will out of Europe. Had the Scots voted yes, the most intolerant aspects of British society would not have been emboldened and enlivened. Had the Scots voted yes, the Etonian incompetence leading the Tory party would not have assumed that referenda could be won through the tactics of fear. Had the Scots voted yes, it's likely that the European referendum would not have taken place at the same time as our Assembly elections. Wales would not have gone to the polls at the very moment where an Europhobic right-wing press was at its most virulent, propelling UKIP into our National Assembly and poisoning political debates in Wales for the next 5 years. But if you read people like Massey and Cohen, you could swear the SNP and Brexit are essentially part of the same global movement as Trump. In Wales, we're not strong enough to matter yet, but the same arguments will be used against us, and we need to be prepared to counter them. And it's getting wet, my papers are getting wet. Final point in relation to this then. So let's emphasise that our nationalism is nothing like that of Trump and Farage. It's remarkable that it needs saying. It should be palpably obvious to anyone with even the most superficial historical knowledge that all nationalisms are by no means alike, as though Hitler is the same as Malcolm X, or as though Donald Trump is the same as Mahatma Gandhi. Living in the Nice constituents, I particularly associate that argument with Peter Hain, my previous MP. The ridiculousness of the old nationalisms are the same argument, and usually put down to ignorance. But surely that's not the case for Hain, who's the biographer of one of the greatest nationalists of the 20th century, Nelson Mandela. The way in which Mandela became dissociated from his actual political beliefs in the last decade of his life to become every politician's ideal dinner guest in those tedious Sunday supplement questionnaires deserves a study in itself. But in his autobiography, Mandela is quite clear. He says this: "I was first and foremost an African nationalist, fighting for the emancipation from minority rule and the right to control our own destiny. But at the same time, South Africa and the African continent were part of the larger world. Our problems, while distinctive and special, were not unique, and the philosophy that placed those problems in an international and historical context of the greater world and of course of history was valuable. I was prepared to use whatever means necessary to speed up the erasure of human prejudice and end the chauvinistic and violent nationalism that I saw around me. I was first and foremost an African nationalist. I was first and foremost an African nationalist." And then he goes on to say he was prepared to use whatever means necessary to defeat chauvinism and violent nationalism. There are clearly two nationalisms here. Nelson Mandela knew all too well that all nationalisms were not the same. Ac gyfeillion heddiw rydyn ni'n wynebu yr un ddau genedlaetholdeb. We're faced with the same two nationalisms in the world today. There's the violent and chauvinistic nationalism of a Trump and a Le Pen, a Farage, and yes, a Mark Reckless or a Neil Hamilton. This is on the rise. It seems to have an ill wind in its sails. It may yet destroy us. But there's also a counter-nationalism, a nationalism of liberation, Libernation perhaps, a movement of minorities, a movement that the minorities of Europe and ourselves share perhaps with the African Americans who voted 88% against Trump, or the Standing Rock Sioux fighting for their sacred ground against the inhumane Dakota Access Pipeline. Ours is a movement of liberation, not incarceration, a movement of hope, not fear, a movement based on the open hand, not the closed fist. Our time is now. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Daniel Williams, for that stirring speech. Now, next up, I'd like to ask Liam Rees to come forward. Liam Rees, Chair of Plaid Bank Swansea. Big hand, please.
Diolch yn fawr pawb. So long as Wales remains a part of the Union, it will be nothing more than an extension of England. How else can you explain UKIP's ability to catapult cronies such as Neil Hamilton into our legislative body? Dydyn nhw erioed wedi byw yma? Why are they now able to contribute to the legislation of a nation they have never lived nor set foot in? Progress through devolution finds itself stunted by the Westminster elite. After the rich tapestry of Welsh interest campaigners, we find the concessions we have so meagre that as it stands, cities such as London and Manchester have greater control over policing than we do as a nation. Why are we often told that if we wish to create change, we should do it within the current system, rather than push for independence? Nid wyth gwybod beth y mae'r bobl hyn wedi ysmygu. What have they been smoking? There are 30 members of Parliament for Wales up against over 500 English MPs. This system guarantees that our voices will always be drowned out. We can't operate within this system to create the progressive change that we want. Beth am ein iaith? It seems that not a single year goes by in which Parliament does not make it the subject of ridicule and biased scrutiny, even though it's supposed to be considered a devolved matter. In 2014, I actively sought to learn Welsh, and it didn't take long before I was confronted with this same colonial scrutiny. It's a dying language. Why are you bothering learning it? Everyone speaks English, so there's no point. Everyone can understand you if you speak English. These are as baseless as they seem. You only need to look across the seas at other nations to see that multilingualism is common and we are the outlier. Dwi'n caru fy iaith cartref ac mae'n radd i ni ddiogelu. It was only in 2011 in the Senedd through the Welsh language measure that Welsh gained an official status within the UK, previously relying on the EU's recognition of Welsh as an official minority language. They must have been too busy to bother with it in London. Frankly, it's abhorrent that we are still fighting the very state that previously introduced the Welsh Not and systematically beat children who were caught speaking Welsh. And now we're asking them for recognition. And now I'd like to get on to a social matter that is quite close to my heart, and that is LGBT rights. The reason I support, and the reason I was so drawn to groups such as this, and anti-Bunyaith groups, and freedom, is because it is based in the principles of freedom and liberty, the ability to do what you want, to the point where in 1967, when the Sexual Offences Act was voted on, which was an amendment that would decriminalise homosexuality. All 3 Welsh nationalist MPs, despite right-wing opposition, voted to decriminalise homosexuality. And I have found an abundant amount of support from all of you. When we act together, we can achieve great things and move mountains. And by looking at the sheer energy I'm receiving from you all today, I am reassured that independence is a feasible reality, not a long-term fever dream. Gyda'n gilydd gallwn a deulu, cenedl and gwe. Together we can build a better nation. Cymru Rydd, diolch yn fawr pawb.
Diolch yn fawr, Liam. And next up, into the rain, we have Helen Gwyntley and Gwyndaf, Chair of Cymdeithas yr Iaith, who wants to talk to us about the need to have this conversation. Can we have a big round of applause, please, for Helen?
Bedwar mis yn ôl bellach, o'n i'n siarad mewn rali Yes Cymru dros annibyniaeth i Gymru. Ar y byd diwrnod roedd dyddiadau Gwyl Gwynfor yn dathlu 100 mlwyddiant ethol Gwynfor Evans fel yr aelod Plaid Cymru cyntaf i gael ei ethol i Senedd Lloegr. Cenedlaetholwr Cymreig yn Senedd Lloegr. Mi nodes i ar y diwrnod hwnnw, 4 mis yn ôl, ei bod hi'n 480 o flynyddoedd ers y ddeddf uno. Uno Cymru a Lloegr. Uno Cymru a Lloegr, deddf nad oedd yn uno Cymru a Lloegr o gwbl. Mae'r fath beth yn amhosib. Deddf oedd yn golygu gormes un wlad ar y llall. Deddf oedd yn golygu un gwlad yn difa'r llall. A beth am edrych nôl am eiliad trwy lygad hanes, i ni gael gweld pa fath o wlad i ni eisiau bod. Ni yw'r genedl a gosodd ei lliw olaf yn 1982 ac a fodlonodd ac sydd yn bodoli a roi teitl Tywysog Cymru a'r frenhiniaeth y wlad sydd wedi ein gormesu ni. Ni yw'r genedl sydd yn cymunedau yn cael ei bygwth a'i boddi gan y wlad sydd yn gormesu ni. Ni yw'r genedl sydd yn gadael i Loegr ddweud wrthon ni beth i wneud gyda'n dŵr ni, yn gwynt ni, a gyda popeth ni, a gyda'n harian ni. Ni yw'r genedl sydd yn gwisgo'n cysau coch rygbi gyda balchder, ond gyda 3 fflien tywysog Cymru ar ein colonnau, sydd heb gysylltiad â tywysogion Cymreig brodorol, ond â Edward y Trydydd o Loegr, jyst un hatgoffa ni. Ni yw'r genedl sydd yn derbyn OBEs a MBEs wrth frenhiniaeth y wlad sydd wedi ein gormesu ni. Gyda gwyn fawr ar ei wynebau ac yn gweud diolch yn fawr iawn, ac yn ddath i'r ffaith ein bod ni'n cael ein prynu, neu falle wedi cael ein prynu. Ni yw'r genedl sydd wedi bod yn hapus i weld y cymunedau ni'n cael ei boddi gan ail-gartrefi pobl o bant. Ni yw'r genedl a chael ddyn o'r sioeau amaethyddol mwyaf yn y byd, ond y Royal Welsh yw hi. Ni yw'r genedl sydd wedi bodloni ar Llywodraeth Gwlad yn gormes yn cau pethau glo, lle oedd miloedd ar filoedd o bobl yn gweithio ac yn byw, a gadael i'r cymunedau hynny i bwdri. Ni yw'r genedl sydd yn gadael i wasg Lloegr weid hynny beth i feddwl. Ni yw'r bobl sydd wedi gadael i Lundain yn gwneud ni yn dlawd a sydd yn ein cadw ni'n dlawd. Ni yw'r genedl sydd wedi cael ein hanwybyddu ac sydd erbyn hyn yn anweledig i'r byd yng nghysgod ein meistri. Ni yw'r genedl sydd yn meddwl bod cael ei rheoli gan Lywodraeth o Lundain sydd becso'r i botwm corn amdano ni yn well na rheoli'n hunain. Ni yw'r genedl sydd wedi cael y Welsh Not yn hongian o amgylch yn gydfe ac sydd erbyn hyn a llai na 20% o bobl yn siarad i'r iaith brodorol ni. Gyda rhai sydd yn medru y Gymraeg ond sydd ddim yn gweld gwerth ynddi a sydd yn embarrassed ohoni. Gyda rhai yng Nghymru yn brwydro i sicrhau bod eu plaid yn uniaethog, yn iaith y byd, ond yn methu siarad ein mamiaith gan ei bod yn meddwl bod yr iaith honno'n eilradd. Mae'r Gymraeg yn famiaeth i ni gyd, boed yn bod ni'n medru hi ar y funud neu beidio. Hon yw iaith y tir hwn, hon yw priod iaith Cymru. Bydd y fyna i Gwynfor Evans eto yn ei lyfr Aros Mai. Ers y ddeddfuno i dat y ganrif hon, polisi Cymreig y Llywodraeth Saesnig fi ceisio difa'r iaith Gymraeg a difodi'r genedl Gymreig. Y ffordd i ddifodi'r cenedl yw trwy ddifau diwylliant. Y ffordd i ddifa diwylliant yw trwy ddileu eu taith. Ni yw'r genedl sydd wedi cael canrifoedd o addysgu am hanes a diwylliant cenedl ei gormeswyr drwy gyfrwng iaith yn gormeswyr, heb ystyr i'n hanes ni ein hunain, fel wedodd Gerallt Lloyd Owen. Ni yw'r genedl sydd wedi cael ei rhannu yn dde, gogledd, gorllewin, dwyrain, y Cymru Cymraeg a'r Cymru di-Gymraeg. Ni yw'r genedl sy'n credu mai dyma i ni'n ei heiddi. Ond, gweitha hyn i gyd, ni yw cenedl Llywelyn ein Lliw Olaf, ni yw cenedl Owain Glyndŵr, ni yw cenedl Henry Richards, Fiorydd Davies a Waldo Williams, ni yw cenedl y Papurau Bro a Tŷ Tawe, ni yw cenedl Llangan Deir a wrthafodd y bygythiad i ddodi y cymuned. Ni yw cenedl Capel Llwyn Rhyd Owen a gododd yn erbyn meistri tir. Ac adalodd y pris am wneud hynny. Ni, gwell neu'r gwaith, yw cenedl y chwyldro diwydiannol. Ni yw cenedl y mwydlofio, y gwlana a'r cynhyrchwyr llaeth a chig. Ni yw cenedl Merched Beca a Siartwyr. Ni yw cenedl Cymru Ewro 2016 a chwifiodd faner Cymru yn Ffrainc gydag urddas a pharch. Gweitha'r cwbl, mae gyda ni faner y Draig Goch, mae gyda ni anthem, mae gyda ni lwyth o bobl breiddar mewn chwaraeon, yn gerddorion, yn wyddonwyr, yn fathemategwyr, yn feir, yn ymieithwyr, yn feddygon, yn ymchwilwyr, yn wynyddwyr, yn ddarlledwyr, yn bopeth ac yn bobl busnes. Mae gyda ni ein llyfrgell genedlaethol. Mae gyda ni busnesau enfawr rhyngwladol Cymreig. Mae gyda ni lwythi o busnesu bach llewyrchus Cymreig. Mae gyda ni un o'r sioeau amaethyddol mwyaf yn y byd. Mae gyda ni un o'r gwyliau diwylliannol mwyaf yn y byd yn ein iaith brodorol. Ac mae gyda ni rai hynny sy'n fodlon brwydro. Yn Gymdeithas yr Iaith, yn Yes Cymru, yn bob un ohono ni fan hyn heddi. Ac mae hi frwydr, achos rhan ni'n genedl sydd yn gwybod yn bod ni'n heiddi gwell. Mae Tricia Roberts, sydd yn sbardun i heddiw, ac wedi gwneud y gwaith trefnu, wedi rhoi oriau ar egni i mewn, achos ei bod ni'n hynod brysur yn gweithio llawn amser fel nyrs ar shift, achos mae hi'n gwybod ein bod ni fel cenedl yn heiddi gwell, ac yn gallu gwneud gwell, diolch yn fawr iawn. A dyna'r wlad dwi eisiau bod. Dwi'n genedlaetholwraig, ac i ddweud hynny gyda'r mhen yn uchel. Mae'r wasg wedi bod yn taflu'r gair nationalist o gwmpas mewn cyd-destun salw. I ddisgrifio pobl fel Arlywydd Newydd America, Britain First a Llofrudd Joe Cox. Fel petai yn air brwnt ac yn ei cyd-destun nhw mae e. Ond nid dyna beth yw bod yn genedlaetholwyr BBC. Dyw cariad y gwlad ddim yn golygu cysineb o bopeth arall. Nid cenedlaetholwyr fi'n meddwl yn bod yn well na neb arall. Mae bod yn genedlaetholwr yn beth prydferth. Ystywed Tegwyn Ifan, does dim byd yn fwy naturiol na charu iaith a gwlad. Ac gweld gwlad fel microcosm o'r byd. Yn genedl sydd yn sylweddoli yn bod ni mor dywyrchus ac mor iach a'r gwanaf a'r mwyaf bregus yn ein mesgu. A bod ni gydradd ar lwyfan y byd. Ddim yn eilradd, ddim yn atodiad. Dyw Cymru ei phobl ddim yn heiddi bod yn llai o wlad y cenedl ac unrhyw wlad y cenedl arall. Mae gyda ni'r hawl i wneud yn penderfyniadau ein hunain i'n pobl ein hunain. Yn y byd, ni'n gweld ein hunain yn rhan ohoni. Dyn ni ddim brypsyn yn well na chenhedloedd eraill y byd, ond dyn ni ddim brypsyn yn waith, chwaith. Di beth ydych chi'n gwneud o fan hyn? Gallwch chi fynd ar-lein o fan hyn i ymylodia Yes Cymru. Sy'n rhyw, bynt y mis, ni wedi dechrau'r gwaith o fapio'n cyfnogwyr, sgiliau cyfnogwyr a lleoliadau dirydol i'n cyfnogwyr ni. Mae Yes Cymru wrthi'n creu mwy o ddefnydd, mwy o dyflenni, mwy o sticeri fath yno o beth. Mae eisiau arian ar yr ymgyrch. Mae modd cyfrannu. Mae yna lyfryn wrthi yn cael ei greu, bydd yn amlinellu ac ateb llawer o gwestiynau ar annibyniaeth y wlad. Nath nifer o gwestiynau ar economi, lluoedd arfog, statws rhyngwladol, amgylchedd ac ymdeithas Cymru, mewn Cymru annibynnol. Mae'n ymgyrch torfol ar fi'n dechrau weriannu fe, felly bydd y llyfr na gobeithio ar gael yn y flwyddyn newydd. O wybod adnoddau naturiol ac adnoddau o ran pobl y wlad hon. Mae'n anodd gyda chi a fi falle i gredu bod rhywun yn gallu meddwl bod y wlad sydd wedi gormesu ni yn gwybod yn well beth sydd angen arno ni. Ond dyna natur gormes, mae'n hynod o seicolegol. Felly mae lot o gwestiynau yn mynd i fod gyda lot o bobl, yn arbennig falle am yr economi. Mae'n rhaid i ni barchu'r gwestiynau ac amheuon pobl. Mae'n rhaid i ni arfogi'n hunain, bob un ohono ni, gyda'r atebion. A dyna'n union bydd y llyfr bach hwn sydd ar fi'n cael ei cyhoeddi i'w wneud, felly mae'n rhaid i ni fyny copi ohono. Mae grŵp yn cwrdd ar ôl y rali hwn, hefyd, fyddwch chi trisio am y manylion. Ond yn fwy na hyn i gyd, falle, mae'n rhaid i ni siarad gyda pobl, gyda hyder a brwdfrydedd. Yn eich gwaith, wrth i eithaf ysgol, mewn priodas, yn y siop, yn y dafarn, codwr, newn ni godi y pop. Mae'r cwch ar fi'n gadael y bai, mae'r rhaid i ni gyd sydd fan hyn heddi lenwi'r cwch hwnnw. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd am ddod ac yn wrando, Prydydd i Gymru.
Diolch Helen and Honey, thank you for that. And now our fourth speaker, former MP of Carmarthen, Gwynoro Jones. Give a big round of applause, please.
Dwi'n gyfeillion. Nawr te, pan wedi gadael gwrthido'n bore yma, o'n i'n meddwl beth wisgai. Ac dwi'n gwrdd i esi, gyfes i adreg rhyw 15 mlynedd yn ôl neu mwy o Cap Cymru. So, o'n i'n meddwl, wedi godau Donald Trump, wedi godau ni. A mae'n cywir yn gwella, diolch am chi ddod mas, diolch i Helen, am ffaith am siarad. Dwi'n hoffi gwrando ar Helen, achos mae'n ddiwio'n, mae'n credu yn hyn mae'n dweud, ac mae'n rhan o ddyfodol Cymru. Nawr, un o'r bobl mae'n dwi, chi'n gweld chydig bach o'r Moses, dyna. Helpu i gyrraedd gweld gwlad o'r newid. Mae bob bosib fel ai ddim yn dyddiau hynny. Ond mae'n dechrau y dyddiau yma. Now, Home Rule has been an issue for over 130 years. Ireland, the Liberal Party split because of Home Rule. It split because of Gladstone and the Irish dimension, and Chamberlain, who actually believed, if you read the history properly, and people never do, you know, I hear all sorts of ridiculous speeches made by all sorts of ridiculous people who should know better. Chamberlain believed in a federal Britain. He used to call it Home Rule all round. Right? And I read a memoirs of Lloyd George, where he said towards the end of his life that he made the wrong choice. He went and followed Gladstone. But you realise that actually the guy who had the real vision of what the UK should have been was Chamberlain. Anyway, then we had the Labour Party, Kay Hardy, Arthur Henderson, Ramsay MacDonald. Up until about 1920 odd, they were home rulers. They believed it. Then we had a sad period of the Irish problem, then the 20s, the 30s, the Second World War. And what was a vision that was there in the senior parties weakened and ultimately disappeared. In fact, this might surprise you, even the Tory party in the 1920s were talking of a federal Britain. But as I said, the social conditions, the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1940s, everything disappeared. And by the 1945 general election, what was Home Rule for Wales, and in Labour Party dimension, disappeared. We know the struggle, we're all, oh, there are some two young people here. I'm not going to waste my time on the rest of the story, but what I am going to say is that the future depends on how big you think about your country. The future depends on what do you want for Wales. Now you see, sadly, after we had a Secretary of State for Wales, the Welsh office, after we had eventually Gwynfor winning Carmarthen, and then 30 years afterwards, don't think it was because of Carmarthen. 30 years afterwards, we got to Welsh Assembly. And when we got to Welsh Assembly, I won't go into the history of all that. I have a feeling that the political parties in Wales got complacent. They lost the dimension. They were willing to accept the crumbs. And if you ask for crumbs, sometimes you might get nothing. If you ask for something bigger, and that is taking place these days, man. Let me tell you now, I follow these things seriously. There are people, you'll be surprised who they are, who are talking of a federal Britain, Dominion status for Wales, even the House of Lords. Actually, at this moment, the biggest campaigners for Welsh devolution is not in the House of Commons, it's in the House of Lords. This very week and last week, a man who I love dearly, and after 45 years, we had not been in touch with. If anybody bothers to look at my video channel, my YouTube channel, or my blogs, we have reconnected after 45 years, and we are reliving the devolution campaigns we did in the late 60s and 70s. I'm in my mid-70s. Mr. Morgan is in his mid-80s. I tell you, Mr. Morgan has lost none of his nationalism. Mr. Morgan has lost none of his vision. Mr. Morgan knows exactly what Wales should be as a land and a nation. And he is my great motivator at the moment. Now Wales has many people who, I have to book it now because I need a bit of paper. I don't usually prepare notes. But there are some people that it's worth preparing notes for. There are two visions of Wales. Let me read you this. Between the 16th and 18th century, Wales had practically no history at all. And even before that, it was the history of brigands, the rural brigands, who have been ennobled. Remember that word? Is that the guy I tell you who says all this? Who have been ennobled by being called princes. Now that's the Kinnock. That was Kinnock's vision of Welsh history. Let me give you another vision, a much wider vision, a much greater vision. Of the 52 people that declared the independence of America, the Declaration of Independence, 37 were of Welsh descent. Kinnock says Wales has no history, has made no impact. Of the first 6 presidents of America, 4 could speak Welsh. Jefferson, the 2 Adamses, Abraham Lincoln was so proud of his Welsh heritage that he had a plaque outside Washington in Welsh. If I can turn this round and I'll tell you now. And this is what it said. Y iaith, y gwlad, y cenedl Cymru, Cymru am byth, Abraham Lincoln. Yes, we have a heritage, but we also have another dimension. And never be afraid, because I do suspect sometimes, Mike, there are so many people in different parties in Wales who don't want to talk his name, but speak his name. Do not belittle David Lloyd George's contribution to Wales and politics. Never belittle it. The first Welshman, the only Welsh-speaking Welshman, He had a vision, he had problems, who hasn't? But he was a proud man. And he was challenged one day in the House of Commons about why was he speaking about Wales and the language, a bit like what you were saying earlier, sir, how people are belittled. You know what Lloyd George said? Welsh, he told his MP, sorry MP, Welsh was the language of kings, when the English were swinging by their tails in the Baltic. That's a saying, you see. That says it all about the history. That says it all about where we came from. That says it all about our heritage. That says it all about how long we've been together. Now, we are moving forward. The question of home rule, independence, will never disappear. However much it's attempted to belittle it, push it over the side. Why? It's a cause that will never end. It cannot be defeated. So the question is, what is the roadmap? How do we plan the future? Mr. Morgan in the House of Lords suggested last week that we should set up a working party, the Secretary of State, to look into Dominion status for Wales. Now some of you might think, oh, that's not independence. It says, dear, read about it. It says, near independence as you can make it. It's like, hang on a minute, it's like Australia, it's like New Zealand, it's like Canada. You think they're not independent? Of course they are. But that's what they are. They have dominion status. That's the word they used to describe them. Okay? Read about it. But it's a roadmap. We need to do that roadmap. So, as part of that roadmap, we have the Wales Bill. And we were rather happy about the Wales Bill for a while, because it gave reserve powers. Scotland has reserve powers, Northern Ireland has reserve powers, and Wales now apparently, the Wales Bill was getting reserve powers. But hang on a minute. They then decided, yes, you can have reserve powers except these 200 matters. 200. Many of them trivial, irresponsible, and as Lloyd George said, as Mr. Morgan said in the House of Lords last week, when Jim Griffiths was colonial secretary in the 1950s, 50s, do you ever think that when we gave freedom to the African countries, to the Caribbean colonies, do you ever think, okay, look, you can have your freedom, but by the way, there are 200 things you can't legislate on. Now he has secured, I think, we'll have to wait, because there's a semi-promise in the answer that the Secretary of State will look into the suggestion of re-examining all these powers. Now why am I saying these things? It's part of the roadmap. It's part of the struggle. Because we have to convince a Welsh people that have been indoctrinated. What have we been indoctrinated with? Helen and others have said about it. But we've been indoctrinated about more serious things. Our media. Do you realise only about 5–10% read Welsh newspapers, the Western Mail? What do we read most? Daily Mail, Telegraph, Daily Express, Guardian, Mirror, Sun. Vast majority read those papers of Welsh people. They don't get Welsh news. They don't get the Welsh perspective. They don't get Welsh issues. They don't get Welsh problems. They don't get Welsh politics. Now that's one big problem. And somehow we've got to overcome that. Then you come to the broadcasting media. Despite what you're covering, BBC Wales doing a good job. They're a minority in what the Welsh people want to listen. They listen to Sky News. They listen to News at 6. They listen to Newsnight. They listen to Daily Politics. They listen to all these things. And what is the consequence? The Welsh dimension gets swamped. The Welsh dimension gets lost. And then we come back to Wales. We come back to our own parties. And we've got to be honest about this. I've been out of politics for 20 odd years. And I'm glad I'm back. And I'm glad that I'm supporting Yes Cymru. Because let me tell you why. You are the only people, it is the only movement that is putting the question of independence at the forefront of Welsh politics. For some reason, Labour, Liberal Democrats, Plaid Cymru, they all will talk about social conditions. They all will talk about housing, the economy, concerns of all kinds. But when it comes to the question of Wales, when it comes to the constitutional place of Wales in the UK, in Europe and the world, they're silent. They're very silent. Two people have stood out, three people actually, have stood out in the House of Lords in the last fortnight. Liston, David Wigley and the Leaded Morgan. And I say this now here, I don't know whether this will do a Leaded Morgan any good at all. I hope to God that one day she will be the leader of the Labour Party in Wales, in the Welsh Assembly. And Leaded has a vision. And Leaded understands. Cowen understands, but for some reason, he talks of the right words sometimes. There is something holding him back. What's holding him back? The average member of the Labour Party in the Assembly and in the House of Commons. Now, the future is yours, more than mine, but I'll be with you as much as I can. But don't think things can't change. They can. Who would have thought that we are here today, after that Scottish independence vote, that everyone in the establishment thought it was all sorted and cosy, and then Cameron won the election. Better still, everybody was even happier than the Brexit vote. And the Brexit vote changes everything. Absolutely everything. The constitution of this country, the future of the UK, it's all up for grabs. Cameron has gone. Corbyn has arrived. Who would have put money on that 2 years ago? Corbyn has arrived. Brexit is with us. The issue and the future and the structure of the United Kingdom and the future of the nations of Wales, Scotland and Ireland are now in the melting pot of our politics. In the melting pot. And it will change. I have no doubt about it. Britain is not going to be as it is now, 10 years' time. It's difficult for people to believe it. It's difficult for people to accept it. But it will change, and it is changing. And you're part of that. Your movement is part of that. Well, I'm going to admit, my movement, because I'm with you all the way on these things. Sometimes we might differ on the road. Sometimes we might differ on the steps to take. But the end goal, what you are looking for, what you want, what I want. Yes, I want the free Wales. Yes, I want the land and nation of Wales to be what it always was and should be. The only issue for me, in the middle of it all, is how do we get there? How is it plotted? What are the steps? What is the roadmap? What are the signals? When you travel from Swansea to Bangor, there are road signs. You go to Canby, Aberystwyth, Machynlleth. The map towards independence is the same. What are the road signs? What are the signs on that road? But if we work together, it can be done. It will be done. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr, Gwenora Jones. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd hefyd. Thank you very much to all of you for coming to this rally today. Thank you for all those who have helped out, provided resources, banners, sound and technology. Thank you to those who are taking pictures now to make sure there's a record of this, so no one can ever say it didn't happen, it wasn't all that. Thank you for the conversation that we've been having today, and thank you most of all to Tricia Roberts, whose vision made this possible. Thank you all for the seeds of this conversation. We are now going to be continuing that conversation in the no sign bar down the road. So if you feel you haven't had enough of it yet, come and join us and let's talk some more and let's talk it up. In the meantime, if you want more to do with Yes Cymru, come and talk to any of us, you know where to find us, and let's get involved and let's make this happen. Thank you all. Diolch yn fawr.
Yeah, Wine Street, Hannah Ford's Wine Street.
Got to get everything away first, but after that, what we do that.